Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on Episode 5 of Spy Family Season 3. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Alright, so last we left off, there was a fair bit of cloak and dagger stuff with the handler, and then Anya sort of displayed her lack of academic rigor to Mr. Henderson, and, you know, it's not that she tanked her reputation in his mind, but she certainly wasn't doing herself any favors. So now Anya is having to, I guess, navigate a social situation with her mother, you know. Oh dear. So unfortunately, Anya's, maybe pestering isn't the right way to put it, but like, you know, this may very well have dire repercussions for Bond, the poor creature. Now, it seems that today's a bit of a Yor episode. And, if I recall where this is going, things are on the verge of getting, kind of interesting, although I seem to recall that this may be, something that's adapted earlier than maybe it should be. Like, I know sometimes things get adapted out of order because of, you know, production constraints, or, you know, people might assume it works better one way than the other, but, I guess the crux of the issue here is that Yor's just kinda struggling, you know? I mean, when you get down to it, you have to understand her position as essentially using this family as a cover. And I mean, that's probably even a fair bit more selfish than is actually true. That's how things initially started, of course, but, you know, I think it's fairly obvious even now that, Yor is warming up to the idea of family, and this family in particular, but it is important to note that as someone who works largely as an assassin, you know, normal day-to-day life is kind of outside of her remit, and like even like normal simple interactions are kind of difficult, you know? So it seems to me that she's having a bit of a lapse in judgment here. You know, the department store isn't exactly the first place I would assume to find, you know, food in the way that she's looking for, because, you know, like, she's going around, there's all sorts of, like, boutiques and stores that sell, well, things that aren't food, you know? I mean, I'm sure there's probably, like, a food court or someplace where you can buy food, but not, a grocery store, quote-unquote. You know, there is something sort of vaguely appealing that Yor's so out of her element, and, you know, she just sort of assumes this place is kind of scary. You know, I certainly understand it, and it's probably not helping that the place is so, elegant and architecturally beautiful. Alright, so here things go again. You're acting on impulse essentially saves a woman from falling down the stairs and catches all her packages and all that in a rather remarkable display of athleticism. That is something. You're, on a fairly consistent basis, shows off all sorts of remarkable feats of physical strength and dexterity, and no one really remarks on it. I mean, they say like, oh wow, that's, incredible, but they don't really remark on how superhuman it is. I seem to recall an instance in a previous season where she, kicks a car and it skids and hits a guy, but, it skids perpendicular to the direction the tires are facing, so it's, a really serious thing to have done something like that. So it seems like yours just being dragged along with her new friend now. And in a way, it's probably a good thing. But it seems like, I don't know, everyone's kind of out of their element here. Because all the other people, they seem to be a little bit kind of wary of your, assuming she must be the help or something. Naturally, yours going to be out of her element, but this is also, a volleyball game. Lest we forget, the last time she took up sports, it was tennis, and, she had a predilection for slicing up the tennis ball with her racket accidentally, so I can only imagine that through some feat of superhuman strength, she's going to, lay someone out on the floor by whacking them with the volleyball. That or, in going for a spike, she's just gonna, puncture the ball. Wouldn't be surprised, really. I think it's fair to say that with the setup, that this other team is unbeatable and that Yor doesn't really know, but everyone's sort of trying to be nice to her. I get the feeling that she's going to be pivotal. Although, unfortunately, she seems to have violated the rules, hitting the ball twice in a row like that. She set the ball correctly, and she spiked it correctly, but, yeah, there we go, it's against the rules. There we go with my classical education again, allowing me to recall the rules of volleyball. So I feel like, maybe Yor is, not necessarily understanding the spirit of the game. Do you... Well, okay. I guess it's more, Oh, it was an illegal move. Alright, well... Yeah, unfortunately, I suppose Yor's profession doesn't necessarily lend her to, being a real team player, So, it makes sense that she would just sort of, take it upon herself, being the only superhuman person on the team. But, I mean, that kind of violates the purpose of playing the game. If you're playing a team sport, the idea is to play as a team. And, it's not really going to be fun for anyone if one person's doing everything. Oh. Alright, well, I guess my expectations have been dashed. Despite they still lost the volleyball match. So I guess, it's unfortunate, despite what could be great natural talent, she ended up being too much of a detriment. So now's the really interesting business, because she seems to have been taken somewhere rather high society with all these other women, and it's not that she's remarkably out of place, but she is, sort of distinct from the other people. And I guess, things are kind of interesting because she's kind of divulging information here. And I would feel like as an assassin, you would kind of want to be guarded about that sort of thing. Like, she's just mentioning, oh, I'm a stepmother, I have a daughter, and all that. It is nice that everyone else is sort of sympathizing with the trouble she's having. It's like, yeah, everyone struggles through these sort of things. It's nice in a way that you're well and truly being an imposter in this sort of a setting is comforted by the fact that, no one really actually knows what they're doing. Like, everyone's just kind of guessing and trying their best. And I guess, everything is just sort of going a ways towards easing her mind. Like a child got a fourth tonitrus bolt, and, I suppose, Yor can feel a little bit better about Anya. But it seems that, her surname and the age of her child sort of precedes her. So it seems as though we now have a plan C. Plan A is Lloyd doing what he's doing. Plan B is Anya making friends with Damien. But now there's Plan C, which is Yor becomes good friends with Damien's mother. It is interesting that she didn't really know anything about any of the goings-on politically. Not like she would be expected to, but that she sort of stumbled into Melinda Desmond, who is, in many ways important. Now, the funny dynamic here that sort of spins up is that, this sort of puts Anya in competition with Yor in a weird sort of way. I mean, it's not like things are immediately great and everything, The first thing Melinda really brings up is that, Anya and Damien kind of got into a fight, which, not great. Like, it's not a good thing that it happened, but, at the very least, she seems to hold no ill will over it. So this is where things get, a little interesting. It seems like Melinda might not necessarily be playing with a full deck here, considering the way she sort of changes demeanor like that. And, maybe that's just kind of how she is, but to be sort of like cheerful and then serious and then cheerful again in that manner, something's going on here. Now, the other interesting thing to note here is that Yor is a bit of an outsider. Like, the other women have all known Melinda since before she was, politically relevant, shall we say. Not that she's politically relevant, but her husband is. So, the idea is that, introductions would be difficult, Melinda would be right to be concerned of people trying to gain political favors or, just infiltrate and do stuff. Fortunately, Yor has no ambitions to that end, which I suppose that's in part why Melinda allowed her into this sort of inner circle here. Ooh, so that's another thing. Melinda's saying, like, look, if the political stances that you hold make things untenable, you don't have to keep coming back here with us, but I'd still like to be your friend. That's, kind of a nice thing, I suppose, but I guess if you're in a position where politics are related to your livelihood, then, I don't know, I guess you really have to tread carefully. So Melinda's broaching the topic of Anya and Damien being friends and all that, and like, they're not exactly friends, but yeah, that's peculiar, Like, Anya talks about Damien sometimes, but that's mainly because of Plan B in her own mind. And your having relayed that information sort of produces a bizarre reaction in Melinda. You know, I'm reminded of that one iconic image from the manga Fire Punch. You know, just like it's ostensibly a smile, but something about it isn't exactly happy, you know? So I guess Lloyd knows a fair bit more about Melinda than Yor does. Namely that her relationship with her husband and her son is kind of distant. So, you know, maybe Melinda isn't exactly an into the Desmond orbit, you know, as much as Lloyd would want it to be. And I guess the other thing is that this also makes Lloyd kind of suspicious of Yor. Unfortunately so, because it's unfounded. You know, I reckon you would have to be extremely careful in a situation like this, but, I don't know, man, doubting your wife like that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Lloyd's just kind of grasping at straws through all of this. Like, it's good to be concerned and wary of things, but when you just sort of, like, spiral into these little potential possibilities, like, I feel like that's not really helpful, you know? So that's interesting. You know, you're saying, like, I'd like to spend more time with the Desmonds to learn what it's like to be a normal family. And, you know, like, Lloyd just kind of points it out in his own mind, like, you know, I don't think they're exactly the picture of normal. You know, like, you can't pick, like, a wealthy, politically connected family and assume what they do is normal, you know? Or at least it's certainly not representative of, the median household. Yeah, so that's something, I guess. Lloyd warning Yor, it's like, hey, look out, because, you know, we are kind of faking this for mutual benefit here, so let's, you know, be a little bit more careful. Not that the Desmonds would necessarily ferret out their fake family or anything, but this is more Lloyd, being kind of self-interested in his own mission, you know? Alright, so I guess Lloyd is sort of latched onto the idea that it probably couldn't hurt. You know, being associated with this group is probably less suspicious for her overall, and she might bring back some interesting gossip. You know, I guess when you put it that way, then it could only be a benefit, however slightly. Oh, here we go. Lloyd is, officially dubbing it Plan C. And therefore, you know, this kind of puts Anya's position at risk here. Like, she's gonna have to pick up the pace on Plan B if she doesn't want to get, put up for adoption again. You know, there's something kind of refreshing about how she puts it here. Like, you know, this is a battle of who can become friends better first, and her opponent in this case is Yor. So I guess she decides that the best way to start this is to, you know, start doing homework. And, I mean, naturally, she's probably not actually doing homework. She's just sort of brainstorming how to make friends with someone. And I feel like, this is one of those things where when you're a kid, like, you can't think too hard about it. It's just gotta be something that happens naturally. Now, meanwhile, it seems like Yor is also kinda out of her depth. You know, she doesn't seem remarkably blessed with an overabundance of friends, you know. Alright, so I guess, the shopkeeper's like, yeah, I mean, you can be friends, I guess, but if we need to prune him, then we need to prune him, so, yeah, I guess we're just ratcheting up the tension a little bit, you know, with the shopkeeper telling you, hey, don't, you know, fall under suspicion of political bias, because things will be bad if your husband starts to suspect you. Yeah. That's an interesting thing that's developing, you know. This idea of potential conflict between Lloyd and Yor if their respective vocations come into conflict. Oh dear. So Anya might have made a mistake. By confiding in Becky that she wants to be friends with Damien, Becky is naturally going to rely on her predilection for soap operas to manufacture something. And, you know, it ain't exactly going to be friendship, but it's probably better than what they currently have. Now, something tells me that this plan is a little bit contrived here. Like, it ain't gonna work the way Becky's expecting it will. I guess in no small part because Damien isn't going along with it. Oh dear. So it seems like everyone's got their work cut out for them. You know, Becky wants to help her friend, Anya wants to make a friend, and yeah, I don't know. She might well have just earned herself another bolt, you know? Yeah, I don't know. Don't know how Anya's gonna get out of this one. I mean, no amount of handkerchiefs are probably gonna help her that much. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.